أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم الحمد لله رب العالمين أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. Dear brothers and sisters, this is your brother Imam Abdul Azeez. We greet you with the traditional greetings of peace of Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And I'm glad you're joining me here in the blessed month of Ramadan. And we just want to continue our discussion on the subject matter of the transformative nature of fasting in the blessed month of Ramadan. And in other words, our other theme is this idea behind getting the most out of the blessed month of Ramadan. We started out in our discussion, dear brothers and sisters, at the very beginning, talking about how niyyah plays a very important part in our application of the religion. And this drives us into this concentration on the self, on the inner self, the nafs. The nafs, dear brothers and sisters, I'll have you know, is the very nature that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us on, but it can go either way. The nafs can be good and the nafs can be bad. You see? And sometimes when we spend too much time relying on our nafs, what happens is we go on the wrong way. However, the term nafs is also associated with psychology. Ilmu nafs is psychology. The Quran itself is the greatest book of psychology, whether it's individual or social, the greatest book of all time, because it's a perfect book. Allah tells you about the identity of people. He tells you about you and me. He tells you about us. He tells you about I. In the Quran, the psychology, the psychosis behind people in their thinking. Society itself, dear brothers and sisters, as you know, before Ramadan, you heard about all the things that's going on. But Allah understands the psychology of the people, what's happening in Ukraine, our brothers and sisters in Palestine. We should feel something about them. And if we don't, dear brothers and sisters, there's something wrong with us. But we should feel something. And in an effort to have some level of solidarity with them, we tend to want to make du'as for them and make an effort to assist them even in those areas that we have no control over. But here's the thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala visits us with the month of Ramadan and tells us that it was given to those who came before us, the fasting in the month. But he tells us that so that we can become more inclined to this natural Islamic ritual. It's all based on nature. And the nature of it, dear brothers and sisters, is having self-control. Self-control is governed by the idea that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is constantly watching us. So we mend our behavior and our thoughts and our actions, our deeds. We tend to try to modify them so they'll be more pleasing to Allah. Remember, Allah never asked you to be perfect. He asks you to strive as though you're in a race toward all that which is good. And so he prescribes fasting for us, right? But look at the context. He says, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. How do we tie in the self with this? He prescribes fasting for you the same way he did it for those who came before you so that you could develop God consciousness. The same root word the word taqwa comes from, derives. And he prescribes this as mandatory on you, on us, every year. Ramadan is the month. Ramadan is only the month in which the pillar is practiced, and that is fasting, the obligatory fasting from sunup to sundown. But Allah in the end, he says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Why does he say that? He says that because everybody's not going to develop taqwa. Everybody's not going to get it. And so he prescribes this every year. Maybe you'll get it this year. People come out of Ramadan and they're worse than they were before they went in. Or they're right where they were when they came in. And we look at this idea being presented and we leave you with this context that Allah prescribes taqwa to develop our taqwa, fasting as a means to develop taqwa. Why? Because the world needs it. They need taqwa in the Ukraine. They need it in Russia. They need it in Palestine, dear brothers and sisters, in Israel. They need taqwa. And when I say they need it and they seem to be the victims, I mean the people who are persecuting them. If they were conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they wouldn't do it. When we come back, dear brothers and sisters, we'll get into the discussion, further discussion on this transformative nature of fasting in the month of Ramadan. May Allah help us. To that we say, Ameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.